should be able to see my list of clients. That's the page that we want you to go to in your portal. So you may not have any clients at all. You may have some clients, but you want to get to this, something that looks like this. And if you can just chime in and let me know if you've got to that point, that'd be great. And if you're having problems getting to the to your portal, let me know that, because we want to get you set up. So I've unmuted everybody if you want to just chime in and tell me if you're in your portal.
I am, Jordan.
I'm in.
Great. Brian, are you in on your portal?
Yep, no problem.
Good, excellent. Michaela, just let me know if we're, and just maybe hit me up on the chat if, about how many people, if we're waiting for anybody else, or I don't recall how many people we have. We have 9 right now, but I don't know how many.
I think we're good to go, Jordy.
Okay, good. So welcome everybody, and I'm Jordy Ayton, and I'm going to be taking you through a start to finish client, opening a client, running the client right through eState Planner from start to finish. And the idea behind eState Planner is to use it, if you can, and I do, with the client, watch it. So, and I'll show you how that sort of works. But that's the idea, so that the client basically is with you through the whole process until you generate the documents. I don't recommend that you show them that part of it. But that's the idea. So just starting, you should all be on a page that looks something like this. Your client tab should be darker blue, and that should list your clients. So eState keeps track of certain information about the questionnaire and when the client was added, et cetera. We're all going to add a client now. So if you guys click on the add button, and you can watch as I do it, but I'd like you to do it yourself. So everybody click the add button. And so we're adding a new client. So I've got Margaret, and you can make up your own name if you like. I'm going with Margaret Wilson. And to add the client, that's all you basically need to do. Now, eState has the ability to send a new client a link to a questionnaire that they can fill in that collects their biographical information, their family information, and their assets. And as they fill that in, it's automatically inputted into eState. So if you wanted to do that, you would click on the button that says Use Questionnaire, okay? If you do that, it's going to require you to put in an email address for this person, because they've got to send the link to them. And the link comes from eState Planner, and it'll say, you know, if I was the lawyer, it would say, you know, Jordan Ayton has invited you to fill out the questionnaire. If you don't want to send the questionnaire to the client, because you don't have to collect the data that way, you can collect the data any way you want, just click off Use Questionnaire, then email is not a mandatory field anymore, okay? So let's add Margaret Wilson as a client by clicking the add button in the bottom right corner. And Margaret should show up as a client, okay? So you should see that she's been added just now. If we wanted to edit something on that, we could go to the 3 dots, and go to edit, and then we could change, if her name was really not Margaret, it was something else, you could change that, or you want to add her email address, or et cetera, okay? So, but now we're acting for Margaret and her husband, Robert. So what we recommend is that if you're going to act for a couple, that you put both people in at the beginning and link them. So let me show you how you do that. So we added Margaret, she's in there, but now we want to add her husband. So we go add, and his name is Robert Wilson. And you'll see a button or a field that says spouse client. That's how you link 2 people together as spouses. So if I click on the word spouse client with my cursor, Up will come, Margaret's name should be top of the list because she's the most recent person. So I'm going to add Margaret, and I'm just going to click on Margaret to select her. So it should say Robert Wilson, spouse client Margaret Wilson. We're not going to send a questionnaire, so we don't have to worry about that, and we're going to click Add. So what does that do? Well, that links those two clients together. So first of all, they appear on the same page. You can flip between the two. Their family trees will be merged. Their planning can be synced. So if you want to do one will for Margaret, and then you want Robert's to be an identical mirror, or you want to copy parts of it, you can sync them. So that's the idea of it. It also does things like checks for duplicate legacies in both wills and make sure things like that. So it does a whole bunch of things, but you want to link them at the beginning. That's the best time to do it. You can link them later, but that's the best time to do it. So now you should have both Margaret and Robert on your list of clients. I'm just going to stop there just to see if anybody had any questions about that, adding a client. Okay, chime in as you feel free, as you feel fit, because anytime we want to get the answers to you. So let's start with Margaret. And so we're going to select Margaret just by clicking on her name in the list of clients. And that will open up her file, and it'll go directly to the family tree. Look on the left part of the screen. You'll see people, assets, debts, etc. So this is how you move between adding people to the family tree or other people, adding assets, fixing assets, planning for the will, and planning for the powers of attorney. Right now we're on the people tab, and you'll see there's two categories of people. There's family and there's other. Right now we're on family. So what we encourage you to do is to have the client either fill in the data using the questionnaire, or you can fill in the data and build out the family tree to the extent that you need it at the very beginning. You can always come back here, and if they say, oh, and I want to add my brother as a guardian, and you haven't put in the brother yet, you can always add the brother at that point. But let me just show you how you add people and how you look at people's data. So Margaret is our client. She's got a black background and a blue circle, right? If I click on Robert, he now has a blue circle. The blue circle is important because that indicates the person that you're going to add a relative to, okay? And I'll just show you how to do that in a moment. Right now we're on Margaret. Let's see, we want to fill in some of Margaret's details. So we double click on Margaret, and that will open up her pane. And you can fill in, you need to put in a first and last name, but you can fill in a Margaret, middle name, sorry. You can fill in an also known as. So she maybe goes by Peggy Wilson. If you fill that in, that's how it will print in the will. It'll say Margaret Jane Wilson, also known as Peggy Wilson, okay? A gender, she's a female. Date of birth, these are filled in just, if you just type the way you would normally type, June 6th, 1967, it's going to calculate the age, okay? We've got country of birth, citizenship. You can have multiple citizens, so you can say Canada and the US, for example, okay? Work address, all of those things. All of these are optional, you can fill them in. They're just fields that you might need for the Law Society, keep, know your client, or some other data that you want to keep. You'll see below all of those, if you scroll down, there's a tab for residency. If you open up that tab, you'll see by default, it's Canada and Ontario. And you're going to probably want to put in the city because it's going to say Margaret Wilson of Barrie, Ontario. Otherwise, it'll just say Margaret Wilson of Ontario, for example. Province is mandatory because each state calculates probate tax based on the jurisdiction of the client. So if she lived in BC, it would be BC probate tax. Then you'll see special circumstances below that. If you click on special circumstances, that opens up some other issues just for us to remember, do we have to ask, or do we want to make notes about vision, hearing, cognition, communication, health, or other? Okay, so if the person, speaks, English is the second language, then you can put that in, not native language or something. Okay. And then we can just save that. So now we've got Margaret and we've got Robert. We want to add a child, okay? So it depends on who the parent is. So let's assume it's Margaret's child. So we need a blue circle around Margaret because we're adding a relative to Margaret. So we're going to click, make sure she's got a blue circle, and then click add. Then select, we're going to select child. And it's going to ask us who's the other parent. It's going to default to the spouse, but they could have a different child. And I'll show you how to do that, or a different parent. But let's go Robert Wilson, select, and let's put in the name of the child. So the child's name is Melissa, or you can make up your own name. Female, I don't know, Feb 26th, 2009. You can do whatever you want. If you scroll down, there's also a special, and you can fill in citizenship. The more data you put into eState, the better, because what that's going to mean is that the analysis of different ramifications of gifts and things like that, planning, will be based on the specific circumstances. So the more information you put in, the better. Look at special circumstances, open that tab up, and you'll see just some things that you're going to want to check for any family members. Like, is there an estrangement? Are they disabled? Are there relationship difficulties, financial management? Do they reside with the client, etc.? And this is also going to import, you know, if they're disabled, it's important that we canvass that because that may give us some planning ideas. Okay, and eState will think about that as well. So you can try that out, but let's add Melissa in there. So now you should have a family tree with Robert, Margaret, and Melissa. Okay, so let's add another child. Everybody do that. So you would just have Margaret. She's got a circle there. You click add. Let's try that again. Child. Let's just assume Robert Wilson is the, hi. Robert Wilson is the other parent.
Say hi.
Hi.
How you doing?
Child thing.
Go. I'm learning how to do stuff.
Playing video games.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm just adding, I'm making this kid's name Franklin Wilson, male, date of birth, I don't, do whatever you want. Okay. And that's how you add people. So let's say we wanted to add somebody to Robert. We want to add Robert's sibling, okay? Remember, if Margaret has the blue circle, it's going to be a sibling of Margaret. If we want to add Robert's sibling, we got to click on Robert. He now has a blue circle. Go add sibling, and then put in, you know, whatever you want to call Mark Wilson male. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question, see if you know the answer. Now I want to add Mark's children in there, the siblings' children. How would I do that? You'd make sure that you clicked on Mark so that he had a blue circle.
Yeah. Then press add.
Add, and you go child. Then it's going to ask you, who's the other parent? So I could say there's a new parent because I haven't put it in yet, or I could say none, right? So you can build out the family tree, right? And you can just put in the names and whatever else and add, and then that's just going to build out that family tree. Now I'm just going to delete that person, but you can leave that person in or whatever. So that's how you do it. So you can add parents in there. The one thing I would always recommend that if you're adding a sibling to Robert, so we have Mark in there already, add another sibling to the main person. So Robert's sibling, not Mark's sibling, unless they're not related somehow. But that would be difficult, I think. But so you, and if you wanted to create sort of more complicated, you'd go up to the parents and create the parents, and then you could create the siblings and do whatever you wanted. Okay? Does that make sense? We found that many people are having trouble with the family tree, so I want to make sure that people have got that concept.
Jordan, when do we have to add in the siblings? Is it when either of them are beneficiaries or?
Correct. Yeah. So
trustees?
Yeah, if they're going to be anywhere in the will, you'll see if they're not in there, you'll have to add them later in the program. So you don't have to add anything that you don't need right at the beginning.
Okay.
To know that many times clients will fill in the questionnaire and they do a beautiful family tree for you, and then you don't have to do any work.
Okay.
But you can do it at your convenience.
So
Okay.
if we don't have any siblings who are either beneficiaries or trustees, just leave them out?
What I typically do is just start with the parents and the kids. And then depending on when we start talking about, oh yeah, the guardians, I want to add my brother. Okay, let's go back to the family tree and build that out.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's how you build a family. And what's important is if they're related, you want to put them in the family tree. If they're not related, there's the other tab. So if you click, there's family and other, click on other. Here's where you would add non-relatives or relatives that are so remote that you're not going to put them into the family tree. Like a first cousin, you're not going to bother building out I mean, if you want, you can, but if you don't want to bother with that, then just put them in the other. But I would certainly put parents, siblings, nieces and nephews. I would build a family tree for those relatives because the software knows who's in different classes, especially if you're thinking of doing a class gift. Okay. You don't have to put anybody in here at the beginning. You can add as you go. Okay. Any questions about people and family? Just so you know, if Robert had another kid from a different relationship, we would just make sure Robert was blue, click the add button, child. The other parent isn't Margaret. It's either a different, we got to name, put in another parent, or if we don't want to bother with that, we just say none. And if we don't want to, we don't want to get into who the ex is or whatever else for whatever reason, you could just put them in and then you'll see the family tree draws that out. So that wouldn't be Margaret's kid down here. Okay. That's how you do blended families.
I had a question.
Sure.
It's Aaron. I just,
Hi.
each one I've been doing, it's popped up automatically Paul Jones as the spouse.
Paul Jones is the spouse on, you've done, sorry.
So two of them that I've done so far, automatically it was populated Paul Jones as the name of the spouse.
Like when you go add?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because the client and
yeah, because
try and get rid of it and I erase it and it doesn't erase.
oh, okay, so let me show you how to do that. So child, it's going to come up with the default as the other parent. Is that what you mean?
No, we at the very, very beginning. When I try to add a client and then add their spouse,
Yes.
it comes up as
oh, that's your Google. You know what that is? That's probably your Chrome. So let me just go back there for a second. So when you go add here, you put in the name, and when you click on spouse client,
yeah,
have you done that? Is that when you see it?
yeah,
Okay. Have you added the first spouse, the first client in?
yeah.
Yes. And then you're adding the second client in, and you don't see their name.
Yeah, so when I go down, when I scroll down and put in spouse, it says none or Paul Jones. So I did it for my own, and then I'm married to Paul Jones too.
Right. So let me just understand this. You added your name first
Yeah,
as client,
yeah,
and you went add.
yeah.
So your name's appearing in the list of clients. And then you put in Paul's name.
No, there's no, it just appeared. And so I tried to erase Paul. I couldn't, I had the choice of doing that.
But where did it appear, I guess, is my question. So you click add.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just email another time.
Yeah.
I'll just email.
Yeah. Okay, because I'm wondering where that came up. Okay, so let's go back then to Margaret Wilson for a second. And so Aaron, do you have a family tree at all or no?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's our family tree. So the next step is to deal with the assets. So let's click on the asset tab there, and that will come up with the asset page. So this is where if the client has done the questionnaire, they would have filled a lot of this data in. But often they don't fill this information in, and so we're left to do it. So if you click on the add button, you'll see this is how you add assets. So we have 4 categories: financial, personal effects, real estate, and miscellaneous. So let's start simple. Let's add an RRSP. So we would know that that was a financial asset, so we could scroll down and find it, or you can type in the search field RRSP. Click on that, select. So this is a typical asset pane. What we have here is the asset name. Now this is important for keeping track of the assets, because when we go to the planning page, it's going to list all of the client's assets. If they have 4 RRSPs and you haven't renamed them, then you're just not going to know which is which. So it's fine to leave it as RSP. The one time you might want to change that is if they've got multiple of a certain type of asset. You can fill in any of this information that you want. Let's fill in the current value. Let's say it's worth $500,000. Okay. The probate tax is going to get calculated automatically because this person's in Ontario. Income tax, that is a manual calculation. That is a calculation that you have to estimate, as we do right now, based on a bunch of factors. But for an RSP, I always put in 50%. So I put in the most tax that could be applicable. Don't worry about the fact that, oh, but there's going to be a spousal rollover, or I'm donating it to charity, or anything like that, because each state's going to take that into account. What you want to do here is put the most income tax that would be triggered on death. So let's add that as an asset. Let's add a house. So a home, let's put that down. So it's a real estate asset. We'll select that. And so one other thing about the asset name, if I'm giving this asset, I'm dealing with this asset in a specific way. In other words, I'm giving it as an absolute bequest, or I'm putting it in trust or something like that, then this is the way it's going to be described in the will. It'll be called the home. If I want it to be called the homestead, then I better change the asset name to homestead. Okay.
Jordan, so when the client gets the questionnaire, they'll be answering a lot of this, so that when we're dealing with this, it'll all be pre-populated, hopefully, with our good clients who fill out forms in detail.
God willing, yes.
Really? Okay.
Then all you're doing is going through it with them.
Editing.
So, yeah, I see you've got a home, whatever.
Okay, got it.
So for real estate, a couple things are mandatory. The province is mandatory if it's Canadian, because it's going to calculate probate tax based on the location of the land, right? Current value, I don't know, put in a number. There's a mortgage, let's put a mortgage down for something. So it's calculating the probate tax based on the value, less the mortgage. It's a principal residence, so there's no income tax. Let's talk about ownership for a second. So assets can be owned in 4 different ways. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see something that says ownership. And if you click on sole, you'll see that there are 4 options. So there's sole, there's joint with right of survivorship, there's partial, like a tenancy in common, or there's like a trust, a bare trust or some other trust arrangement. So for this case, let's make it joint. So we click on the joint. By default, Margaret will be added as a joint owner. Well, that makes sense because it's her asset. But now we want to add the other joint owner. So if we click on the add owner button, and the guy's name is Robert, he's the spouse, and they own it jointly. And then we go add. Okay. So that's how you add assets. So, if we had private company shares, those are financial private company shares as an example. This is a specific example. So let me show you how private company shares. If everyone clicks on add a private company share asset, the corporation name, just make sure we put that in, whatever you want to call it. That is going to appear if you use multiple wills. When we describe corporate assets, it's going to say my shares in 1, 2, 3, 4 Ontario Limited or LTD. Okay. if they have a whole bunch of corporations and you want to be able to show the client which shares we're talking about, then you can just copy the corporation name. What I typically do is just put it like that. And you'll see why, why that's important. I mean, it's not crucial, but it just helps you identify, because it only appears as private company shares if you don't change that. And you can put in all kinds of details about them, you know, put in a value, whatever value you want. There's probably going to be some income tax on those shares when the person dies, et cetera, et cetera. So you can fill that in. Okay, so that's how we do it. I'm going to pause there for a second. Questions about adding assets. So the benefit of this, using it live with the client, is that the client, I say to the client, okay, you know, if Aaron, if you were my client, I'd say, okay, Aaron, is this everything that you own? Yeah, okay, that's right. Or, oh, I forgot to mention that property in Spain. Okay, let's add that property in Spain, right? Et cetera. And so that's a very helpful way to double check with the client. Similarly, I've got to tell you, this is something I didn't think was a big issue, but it really is. So let's say they told me, oh yeah, my brother's name is Mark, right? And so I spell it like that, and you're looking at it, and you say, oh no, Mark is spelled with a CK. Okay, well, I would never have known that, but I get you as the client to make sure that I'm putting it in right. It's actually been so useful for me. And because when I put in their name Mark and they say, oh no, Mark's actually their middle name, his full name is Jonathan, well, I can fix it live with you watching as the client. It's very, very helpful.
Jordan, if I'm just pretending to do this alongside on a split screen, and I'm just doing it for my wife, and we have a corporation, I have no idea what the cost base is or the value of the corporation now. Is vital, or what do we do with that?
No, the more data you put in, the better, but no data is required. So if you don't have values for anything, if you don't even know all the, I mean, hopefully you do dig enough to get the assets, but none of that is required. Why that would be helpful is when we want to show the client, should we use multiple wills or not? Should we use, here's what would happen if we don't have a spousal rollover.
Right.
I mean, who knows their adjusted cost base? Not many people. That's why I didn't make it a mandatory field. And that's why I made income tax a manual field, right? Questions, anybody about assets? And you can always go back to the assets, and I often, you know, so let's say, because every client starts with general personal effects. Let's say, you know how clients list every item that they have in their house, some clients. Those aren't necessary to be put in there unless you're dealing with them in a special way. So if the client says, yes, my collection of tennis rackets, I want to go to a specific person. Great. When you get to that point, go back to assets, add personal effects, specific personal effect, and change this to tennis racket collection. I'm not sure I can spell racket. Tennis racket collection. Tennis balls collection. I can put in a value, I don't have to. But now when I'm planning for it, I can plan for that specific asset, but I didn't put it in at the beginning because probably I didn't need to. Okay. Does that make sense, everybody?
I have a legal question.
Okay.
If the home is jointly owned, doesn't it just roll over from one spouse to another without probate tax?
You'll see. Yeah. So, but what it calculates, because if the spouse is not alive, when the second spouse dies, there's going to be probate tax.
Right, right.
So that's why and that's the same thing for income tax, probate tax. You're putting it, don't think about the fact, oh, but there's going to be a rollover or anything like that.
Okay.
Okay. Debts, it's only, if you put in a mortgage for land, then you don't have to put it in debts because it's already there. But this is for other kinds of debts, including you could build in some testamentary debts if you wanted to demonstrate what's going to be left over at the end, for example. So that's the data collection and organization part. Now we get to the planning. So you'll see will planning scenarios. Everyone click on scenarios. So each state is based on a model, a process of planning for wills, a structure that takes clients through 3 scenarios, if they're married, that is. What do you want to do if your wife or husband is alive when you die? What do you want to do if they're not alive when you die, but you have kids alive or descendants alive? And 3, what happens if everyone's gone? So planning in those 3 scenarios keeps the client in a sort of focused. Otherwise, you'd be jumping around and you'd be missing things. So this is a structured way for clients to get their head around one step at a time. So let's click on the surviving spouse scenario. And this opens up the planning page. So let's stop there for a second. And every scenario looks the same. They all are based on this planning page. So remember I said that the assets are going to be described? Well, here's where they're described. So if I had just left it saying private company shares and not changed the asset name, that's all it would say, right? So that's why I like to put some description in, because I'm going to be able to drag and drop assets around. So I want to know what they are. So you'll see assets, and then you'll see summary. Can you guys click on summary for a second? This is a useful page to show the client, okay, what they have, what they've done so far, right? So Brian, you say, well, but look, there's income tax of 400, I don't know what your numbers say, but mine says $436,000 of probate tax, but hold on, everything's joined or whatever. Well, let's demonstrate to the client the impact of that.
Sorry, I can't see the summary button. Where do I find that?
So it's right beside the assets. So do you have a list of green assets? Then you have summary. Everybody able to find that?
So we click on surviving spouse? Is that what we click on?
Yes, click on surviving spouse.
Yeah.
And that should take you to something that looks like this.
I don't have anything on the side like that.
I think it might be because half the screen, if you're watching this
Oh, okay.
Cut off?
split up, if you
Oh, here it is.
maximize,
I got it.
then you might be able to.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I shrunk the split screen. That's got it now.
Okay. So now we just click on the summary button beside assets. So this shows the client. Now we're going to go back to this because we're going to demonstrate to the client the benefit of certain parts of our planning. Okay. So let's go back to so switch between summary back to the assets. So we've got our list of assets on the left. And click on joint and designated assets. So this is where you would demonstrate if assets were joint or designated, beneficiary designated, then this is where you would put them in. So you'll see an add button. Click on the add button and specify beneficiary. Well, this is going to be joint with the spouse, right? So we're going to click on specify beneficiary and Robert Wilson should show up there or whoever the spouse is. And then there's a green check mark that you're going to just click on and that will create a green box where it says drop assets here. Everybody with me?
Yep.
So now let's talk about joint and designated assets. The RSP they've designated each other, or they're going to in the will in a designate the spouse as the beneficiary. So let's take our mouse, click on the RRSP, hold the left button, and drag it over into the green box and let go. That should drag the asset and drop it into that box. So you click with the left button on your mouse, drag, and then let go, and it should drop it in there.
Well, wouldn't it be better not to designate it in their will and just designate it on the RSP to avoid probate?
Well, it will work you'll see how eState does that.
Okay.
Yeah. But even if you don't want to do the planning in the will, you want to demonstrate to the client what their plan is going to look like. So that's why you would do that. And the home is joint as well. So let's click on the home, drag it, and drop it into that same box. So now you should see the spouse's name with 2 assets and a value. Mine's $1.5 million. Now let's show the client what this does, the benefit of doing this. So let's go back to that summary button. And you can see now, if you scroll to the bottom of that we've saved them $250,000 of tax and $21,000 of probate tax by doing that.
Woohoo!
Okay, so we've earned our fee already. All right, everybody see that? Okay. So You can then click on the initial gifts bar, the black bar, just click on that. That will open up initial gifts. So the next thing, once we've talked to the client about joint and designated assets, the next thing are specific bequests, specific legacies, etc. This is where you put those in. Anything with a specific amount or a specific asset. So the one thing that you'd want to do is give the general personal effects away specifically to the spouse, right? We want a clause. We don't want that part of the residue. So we click, we drag the general personal effects, and we drop them. Okay? That will open up the Add Asset Gift dialog box. For every gift, there's two choices. An absolute gift, no strings, or to a trust, because they're not getting that asset with no strings. In this case, we want the personal effects to go to the spouse with no strings, so it'll be an absolute gift. If we click on, we click on the word beneficiaries, up will come a list of everybody we've added into our family tree or into the people tab. So we click on Robert Wilson, who's the spouse. We want him to get the personal effects, and we click add. Okay. So then, assume that's, for this scenario, that's probably the only direct specific initial gift you're going to give away. Now we have to deal with the residue of the estate. That's the balance of the estate. So if you click on the balance of the estate, the black bar, you'll open up a dialog box that says add segment, run macro. Okay. I'm just going to pause for a second. Run macro, we have a whole bunch of set gifts that, for example, you want to give 100% to the spouse, no strings, like that classic easy gift. You can do that by clicking one button, okay? But I'm just going to show you how it works to create a gift. So the first thing we do is we add a segment. A segment is a percentage of the residue. So let's assume our instructions, or as we're planning, we say, okay, what do you want to do? And they say, I want to give everything to the surviving spouse with no strings, right? So we're going to add a segment of the residue. Well, what's the percentage of the segment? We're giving it the entire residue away. It's 100%, okay? Because you could divvy up the residue in different percentages, but right now, it's 100%. All that does when you create a segment is it creates a percentage, but we need to give away that percentage now, right? So we have 100%, now we have to give it away. So that's where you add the gift, okay? So click Add Gift. And this is your classic add gift dialog box. So again, the choice between absolute and trust. We know we want it to be absolute to the spouse. That's what the instructions were. So we click on beneficiaries, Robert Wilson, absolute, the amount. So you could actually do a percentage or a combination. We want to give away 100% of 100%, right? So we're giving away 100% of this segment, which is 100%. Everybody with me? Because you can divvy up a segment into smaller segments. We don't need a gift over if the spouse is not alive. Why? Because in this scenario, the automatic gift over is, what do you want to do if the spouse is not alive? Okay? So the second scenario will deal with this. So if you're giving an absolute gift to the spouse, all you have to do is put their name in, absolute, and go add. And that will show you that Robert Wilson is getting 100% of segment 1. The identity of the segment is up here. And if you wanted to move back to the main segment page, you can just click the segments, the word segments there, and that'll take you back. And if you had a bunch of different segments, this was 100%, so there's only one. But if you had 25% to this person, 30% to that person, you'd see all the different segments and the circle would be broken up. Okay. If you want to go back to see the segment data, like the gift that you just made, just click on the segment ribbon here. And that'll take you to your gift. Oh, it's to Robert Wilson. Now I want to get into the gift, the particulars. So just click on the ribbon, and that'll open up the dialog box. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
So that's how you create a simple 100% gift to the spouse. Okay. Well, now we've finished the first scenario. we want to move to the second scenario. What do you want to do if Robert's not alive when you die? So when the second spouse dies. So we click here where it says surviving spouse and select descendants only. So we have kids here, so we'll go to descendants only. Okay. So now we ask the client, okay, well, what do you want to do if you're the second to die and the kids are alive, right? So, well, there won't be any joint or designated gifts likely in this case because they're young kids. So we probably don't have any there, but we might want to make some initial gifts. So let's click on the initial gifts ribbon. And the first thing we want to do is we want to give the personal effects to the kids, right? I mean, that makes sense. So let's drag and drop the general personal effects into the box. Up comes the asset gift. Beneficiaries. So you could name the kids if you wanted to, or you could just pick a class. So if we click on the beneficiaries word, the word beneficiary, and we scroll down, you'll see after it lists some of the people that we added, it also says classes. So we can make a class gift. So let's go down to children. Okay. The other way to do that, if you have a long list of people, if you just start typing in children, it'll come up and then you just click on it. Okay. So that's that. You can do fancy things. You can do a home trust. I'm just going to demonstrate how you do that. And the client says, well, I want to let the kids live in the home, right? So we drag the home. It's going to be an initial gift. We drag it in here and we drop it. We choose trust because they're not giving the house to the kids. They're letting the kids live there. So it's a trust. The beneficiaries are the children. Now, who can use it? Well, the children can use it. Okay. Who are going to be the trustees? Maybe they're going to be the same as the executors. Maybe they're going to be different. You can make those changes, and I'll show you down the road how we do appointments. Termination of use. So when is this trust going to end, right? Click on the add button. And let's say the client says, look, I want them to be able to live in the home until the age 25. So you click age of beneficiary and you type in 25 and it makes you ask the client and confirm, do you want it when the first kid hits 25 or when the last kid hits 25? So let's say when all of the kids are 25. But that's not the only termination event. We also want the trustee to be able to terminate that trust if they think, okay, you know what, we're selling this house because the kids, only one of them's living there or whatever else. So add trustee's discretion. And then it'll ask you for earliest list. So you can build out a complicated trust in this way, okay? And you can build out who's going to pay the expenses. I want the mortgage paid. But, in this case, you've got young kids. You're going to have the estate pay 100%. And then it asks you, do you want the estate to pay it from the residue? Do you want to set up a separate fund? So there's a lot of different options. Do you want to be able to buy a replacement property? Do you want an option to purchase? And every week, every Thursday, we do advanced webinars where we show you how to do more complicated planning using eState Planner. But if you play around with this and you click on allow option to purchase, you'll see all kinds of different options in here to build in to the trust. And the thing about that is whatever you can build in here, the will generate. The document will be generated with those provisions. And the gift over is going to follow the residue at the end of the trust. So that's just as an example of how you can build out all kinds of complicated provisions. But now we're going to the residue. Now, most of you would have some sort of standard, types of gifts you give when you've got young kids. So let's click on balance of the estate, the ribbon there, and that opens this up. And I'm just going to demonstrate how macros work. So if you click run macro, eState comes with a bunch of preset gifts, okay? But you can create your own. So if you have a standard one where you say, look, I usually recommend that they hold it till age 27 with 25% at 23 and 33% at 25, like you can build that out yourself. So every time you don't have to go through all that planning each time, you can literally just click on a button. Let's assume that we just want to use the Children's Trust 2-stage one. Let's everybody select that. If you just click on that button, that complicated gift of a trust to the kids equally held in trust to age 30 with a distribution, it's all built in here. So if we now click on the ribbon that says Children's Trust 2 Stages, you'll see the children are getting that gift. Click on the ribbon that says Children there, and this will open up the terms of that trust. So let's say you wanted to start with that concept, age 30, 20, the standard one, but you want to change it. Well, you can go in here and change it. So we scroll down and we say, okay, we want to build in more lump sums, okay? So the way trusts work in eState is you have a duration. That's when the gift becomes an absolute gift. So if you die and the kid's 30, they're going to get their gift absolutely. If you die and they're under 30, it's going to be in trust. So that's the duration. Mandatory payments are things like staged lump sums, a percentage or an amount at certain ages, an annual amount. You get 25 grand a year starting at age 25 or whatever, or mandatory payment of income. So these are mandatory payments must be made. So let's go to staged lump sums. That's what should be there. And you'll see by default, because we picked that macro, at age 25, they're getting 25%, but we can add another stage. So let's go add stage and say, okay, at 28, I want them to get, and then we have a fixed amount. No, we want a percentage. So we click on fixed amount, change it to percentage, and give them another 33.3% at age 28. So you can build as many stages as you want. Okay. Discretionary payments. Typically, we would use unlimited discretion, right? But you can, eState can handle limited discretion. You can only get up to X dollars from the trust, or only if you don't get remarried, or all kinds of things. So, but let's just stick with unlimited because it's simple. And the gift over. What happens if the beneficiary dies either before the testator or before hitting that age? Well, we wanted to go to the beneficiary's issue, and then we wanted to go to the client's issue. Okay. Well, that's the default in this kind of gift. So that's how you can use macros. We have these preset ones, and you can make your own. And we can show you in a tutorial how to do that. I just want to demonstrate for a second how you build that trust if you wanted to do it manually. So manually, you'd say trust. It's going to be the children. So you don't have to do this, but you can, if you want, you can, but you can just follow what I'm going to do. Children are the beneficiaries. Divided equally, yes. Same trustees as executors, yes. Add duration. Add age of beneficiary, age 30. Mandatory payment, add staged lump sums, add, you know, I think we added it, I forget what it was, 25% of 25, was it? Right? Done. And then gift over. So I just want to demonstrate gift over. So you'd say, okay, what happens if they die before that age? Add beneficiary's issue. But we want, what happens if they die without issue? Well, we want a further gift over. Add client's issue. And you get to keep going as you like. And that's how you create a gift. And that's how you create any kind of trust for any person.
Jordan, quick question.
Sure.
So what's your practice on people leaving out one kid over the other? Let's say there's 3 children and they just want to give equally to 2, and then they just want to leave out the third. Do you put this in the will, or do you have this in your notes? eState would notice that. It would say you've got 3 kids, you're not treating them the same. By default, it would put in a forfeiture clause that would say, look, if you challenge the will, you're out. But I would also put in an exclusion of a child clause that would say, I've deliberately excluded X. I'd put that in the will because I don't want them thinking I made a mistake by not naming everybody. And we don't need to mention the reasons why we've excluded.
I don't put that in the will.
Okay, but do you keep the notes for why?
Sorry?
Would you keep the reasons in your notes? I would think.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would audio tape that conversation.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. But then you wouldn't use a class gift, right? You would say, instead of doing that, you wouldn't create 100%
right? You'd go back, you'd actually create 2 segments for 50% each, right? You'd say add a segment, 50% for this kid, right? Add the kid's name, whoever it is, I don't know. And then another 50% for the other kid, right? And because you don't want a class gift there, or else it would include that person. So that's how you would do that. And you can divvy things up, right? As I said, you could.
Okay, thank you.
So remember that segments are creating a percentage, but then you still have to make a gift of that. And then you'd move to the third scenario, and that's how you plan. Let's say I wanted to sync. So I want Robert's will to look the same as Margaret's will. There's a sync button for each scenario. So if I want to sync this scenario, I just click on that, sync, and now Robert's will would look a mirror of this one. And so you sync by scenario. So if I wanted to sync this scenario and I wanted to sync this scenario, I'd have to sync them individually because there are cases where they might not want everything to be synced. So I'm just going to pause there for any questions, because that is actually the fundamental part of eState.
I don't understand how you synced it. I missed that. I don't get it.
Top right corner.
Yeah.
Look in the top right corner. You'll see a sync button. Are you on a planning page?
Yeah.
Top right corner.
What does the sync button look like? Yeah, there's one that looks like a download and one.
It says the spouse's name.
That's
It's sort of
below
like
that.
a refer.
That's-
Oh, yes, the button with the arrows.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, got it. Thank you.
Questions about gifts? Now, here's I urge you to, after this tutorial, book a tutorial, a one-on-one tutorial with our team, where you can go into you can take out a client file and say, okay, I want to start with this one client. Take me through it, and we'll literally watch you do it and say to you, okay, now I want to make a gift to these kids, but they have to hold it and we will show you how to do it. What we don't want you doing is sitting there at the computer saying, okay, I don't know how to start, so I'm not going to start. These tutorials are free. We'll give as many as you need. Don't waste your time sitting there. That's my strongest encouragement, because it takes a while. It's going to take a couple hours for you to get comfortable with this software. It's an investment, right? That's what we're asking you to invest is a couple of hours. So then you'll be doing it with your clients live, and they'll be like, wow, this is great. Well, remind me again, what did we give to the grandchildren? Oh, we gave, a cash gift. Do you want to leave something to the grandchildren? Yeah, I want to leave something to the grandchildren. No problem. And there's lots of, you'll see, of course, is that, $100,000 divided equally, or is each kid getting 100,000? Like, there's all kinds of these kinds of things. And the client can see what's going on as you do it. Sorry, I don't know whose mic that was, but. Okay. So the next thing I want to show you. Wait, somebody just check? I'm not sure who that is, but okay. So I'll just mute everybody, and if you need to jump in, just unmute yourself. Appointments. This is where you appoint executors and guardians. All appointments work the same way. We've got appointments, appointees. So we click on the add button, and you'll see the word add appointees. You want to click on appointee, and up comes the list of everybody that you've added, as well as trust companies, etc. So let's assume that the spouse is going to be the primary. So Robert Wilson is appointed, and we just click add. We don't need a condition. A condition is for, okay, this person only acts if that person can't act, or these two people can't act, or any of these people can't act. Okay? So we don't have any condition there. Robert Wilson is the primary. You can add as many primaries as you want. You just don't have any conditions attached. But now let's add somebody. Let's add ourselves as the alternate, okay? So we go add. Now we're not in the family tree. We didn't put our names in. So this is a situation where we want to do something that hasn't been added yet. So if we click the little plus person button on the right, you can put in the name. So I'm going to put in my name. Don't worry about the relationship and just go add. So my name will come up. I'm automatically added to that people tab, right? And I'll show you where that is in a second. The condition, there is a condition because I'm only going to act if Robert can't act, right? So I go condition, if all cannot act, and then Robert's name is going to appear by default. So yeah, if Robert can't act, then Jordan Ayton's going to act. Great, add. Okay, and you can list as many as in whatever order you want. If I wanted to add a third person, so if I can't act, then I want Mark to act, I would click on Mark from the family tree. I'd say if all can't act. Now, it's not if Robert can't act, it's actually if Jordan can't act. So I'm going to click on the X button, click back on specified, and then you can select me from that list. So that's a bit tricky, so just try that. So it goes Robert, then Jordan, then Mark. So that's how you can do
For
that.
the third one, can't we just say if Robert and Jordan cannot act?
You wouldn't do, you don't pick both of them. You just go, you just typically go and the way I do it is I just say Robert, then Jordan, and if Jordan can't act, Mark. So that's how I would typically do it. So that's how appointments work. And you can add multiple appointments. You can, pick, if you pick more than two, you'll see that a majority rule comes up as an option. There's lots of power to this based on what you do. So you have to try it out and play around with it a bit and see how to do things. But again, if you sit there for even a minute and you're like, I don't know what to do, get on the tutorial. Like we're available all day. We'll find a time during the day to get on with you. Okay. So that's how you add and guardians and estate trustees and attorneys for property and personal care. They get added the same way. Okay. The provisions tab, this is where you might put in things like funeral arrangements. You'd also deal with, for example, if the clients are going to have future children, you'd want to click that off because then eState's going to know when it defines children to say Melissa, whatever the kids were, Melissa Franklin, and any other child born to Margaret and I, or Robert and I, okay? And it takes into account, what the drafting is it's important. So if the client is, might have future children, then you want to click that off. Otherwise, the will be limited to the children that are alive now. And we have provisions in eState, and I'll show you where this is. There's a default trust for children, for anybody, not children, but any people who might inherit under a certain age. So you can set the age. You could say 25 or 30, and it'll build a trust for that, for a general trust for anybody under that age, unless that would apply unless there's a specific provision for that same beneficiary. So that's how that works. So a couple of features I want to show. There are 3 buttons, and Brian, I know I found these. The 3 buttons at the top right corner. There's an exclamation point with us in a circle. Everyone click on that. This is what we call advisor alerts. These are warnings that either there's some data missing or that the decision that we've put in might be something we want to document or discuss with the client in more detail. So it provides both tax advice. So in this case, we did a trust for the home for kids, but past age 18, so the capital gains exemption won't apply. We built in, I don't know if you saw this, but we said, okay, the expenses are going to get paid by the residue. Well, there was an immediate gift to the children, or there was no trust there for it. So they're saying, like, there's no money in the residue. How are you going to deal with this? It warns you about non-residents. It knows that the kids are school age or younger, and it's just checking you. Are you sure that you don't have an RESP? or that you might not have one in the future? Because if you do, we probably want to plan for that. As well as data like, you know, there's a missing gender or something like that. Okay. So I always check that before I, you know, at the conclusion of my meeting with the client, before I generate anything, I want to make sure I haven't missed any issues. This button in the middle, that's your notepad. So these are notes. Basically what I keep in here are three things. What the client needs to do, what I need to do, and anything that can't be done in the portal itself. You know, I've got 4 gift overs and eState can't yet do that. I got to remember to do that. Now, I want to explain to you that we are building this constantly and constantly improving it. But, you know, we're less than a year old, so there are still a bunch of features that aren't in there. So if you come across some kind of planning that you want to do that you can't necessarily do yet, that's where I would keep a note. The thing about this is don't put notes about your client that you don't want them to see, because they will see this document. So don't write, you know, this client is driving me crazy, because they'll see that. Okay. The last button, this is the best button. On the far right is a download button. So if we click the download button and we go to summaries, you'll see 3 summaries. Let's go to the profile summary. You'll get a warning. We're going to get charged. Well, you're not going to get charged. As you know, eState is free for during COVID. So, but this is the point at which you would be charged for this client. Up to this point, it's completely free. So if you get to the point where you're planning and you don't generate any documents, you're not charged. Okay. So we continue, and that will create a PDF. Yes.
I have a question. You know, we, like most lawyers, have planned to have a standard fee for a standard estate, but you don't know if it's going to be a standard estate until you learn about the estate, right? And you know, are there a whole bunch of trusts, and it's going to be more complicated.
For sure.
So is it at this point you say, okay, let's stop, and now now I know this is standard. I'll send you my retainer. It's this amount.
Yeah.
Is that what you do?
Yeah. And if you don't want to, if you want to say, look, I want my retainer before I send you any of the documents, including the summaries, do that. Then you won't be charged until you're sure you're going to get retained.
Uh-huh.
I personally, yeah, I get their go ahead at this point because I want to show them the summary.
Uh-huh.
So the PDF that's generated, that profile summary, this is more just for you, but it's a summary of all the people and all the assets. Okay. That's that PDF. You can send this to them. You can print it. You can do whatever you want with it. Keep it in the file. Go back to the eState, because that might open up a new tab, but just go back to the eState portal. Go back to download, top right corner, summaries. Let's go to the graphic one. This is the one I show to my clients at the end of my meeting when I want to hook them. So I click on that and I say to them, okay, so guess what? This is what your will is going to look like. And so this is what their will is going to look like. It's a summary of who the executors are, what assets are passing outside the estate, what taxes are triggered, what's in the residue, what's in the second scenario. Remember, we did that trust for the kids and we had 50% go. I don't know what you ended up doing, but mine, I made absolute guess. But you know, if yours had trust, it would have the terms of the trust on it, etc. So I say to them, this is what your will is going to look like. Oh, that's great. The last summary, and you can play around with this and try them out. The last summary is a text summary. This is great if for the client, so they can see the details of every gift in a summary form. Who the estate trustees are, what joint and designated gifts are going, what initial gifts are happening, what's going on with the residue. So this has every particular gift and every condition and provision of every gift. So I say to them, here's a summary of what your will is going to say. Right? So those are the summaries. The last thing I want to show you before we end tonight, and I'm going to stick around for questions, but I just want to make sure people get off if they want it. Documents. So this is where, if you click on documents, you'll see a whole list of different Word documents that you can generate using eState. Affidavits of execution, counterpart, video, life insurance, multiple wills, single wills, powers of attorney. So what you can do if you want to just test it out is you can click on a single will and generate it. So you just click on single will, export, and I don't want to do it because I'm going to show you something else while you're doing it, but and just try that. So I always think this is like a cooking show. So like a good cooking show, I put my pie in the oven before we started, and this is an example of what will be generated. So it's going to come up when it takes about a minute, 45 seconds to generate a single will. And it's going to say enable editing. You're going to say yes because you want to edit this. And then it's going to say you want to update fields, and you'll say yes. Because if the fields are updated to link all the different paragraphs and all that stuff, so you want to do that. So here we have the document that was generated, and it's a Word document. It's as if you would type this whole thing out. Okay, so if I want to change this word, I can change that word. Okay, I can change any part of this. I can cut something from another document, paste it in here, just a Word document. Okay. So what you're going to have to do, though, is you're going to have to play around with it. You're going to have to get used to the way it gets generated, because that's a challenge in the sense that you're not used to it. But it's a very comprehensive, and one of the options, right, we picked single will. There's a simplified single will. So if your clients don't want, they want a 7-page will, well, that will put in only the key provisions, okay? And we have a list of what provisions are excluded and things like that if you want to try that. But I typically use a more complicated one, more fulsome. But there are certain things that are options in here with footnotes, so it tells you, do you want to include this or not? But most of it, I say to you, it's 95% done within that 45 seconds. And the great thing about that is I book about 15 minutes after every client meeting, planning meeting, and by the end of that 15 minutes, all the documents are ready to go. And I say to my secretary, don't send them out yet. It's too soon. I used to have the other problem. They pile up, all those wills that I have to draft. Well, I no longer have that problem. And as you get comfortable with it, it takes less and less and less and less time. So the one thing I want to say about this is once you've generated the document and you've made whatever changes you want, I don't want this clause in there, and I want to delete this clause or whatever, I want to paste my own clause in. It's very important that you update the field codes, because that'll change all the paragraph numbers so they're accurate. So let me just show everyone how to do this. This is a Word feature. This is not a eState feature, but there's a button that says select. And what you're trying to do is select all. To do select all, there's a couple ways to do it. Control A will do that. Control A on Windows will highlight the whole thing. That's select all. That'll turn everything gray. Then right click with your mouse and choose update fields. That's important because, for example, it's got to calculate the page numbers. If you didn't do this and it says, it would either say this one page or this 178 pages. So you gotta update the field codes. And the way to do that is Control A and then right click update fields. Okay. It comes with a guide. Now you have to bear with us because this is being changed, but the guide goes with the client, goes with the draft, and it explains to the client what every paragraph means. Now you'll see a whole bunch of errors. Those are paragraphs that don't exist in this will. Now, in the next version, which is coming out in the next month or so, you won't have any, this won't appear. But what you do to get rid of this, you take your cursor, click to the left of it, highlight that whole row, and click backspace. It'll automatically delete it. And you can do it with a whole bunch of them. You just click to the left. And so I can do this. And this does take about 15 or to 30 seconds. But now you have a guide that goes to the client that explains what every paragraph does. You'll see in the draft, there's a bunch of footnotes in here because there's some options for you to consider, like the personal effects provision. Because right now we don't have that built into the portal. It's going to be there. That's one of our priorities. We have about 280 items that we're building out. So we just need you to bear with us because they're in the works. And within months, we're going to have those. So, but as I say, it's 95% done. And, it's, for a simple will, for sure, it's almost completely ready. So that is eState. We covered a lot of ground. There's more ground to cover, and you're welcome back on the month. We do these every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. You're welcome to come back on if you want to do another sort of start to finish one. Thursdays at 12:30, we do advanced seminars. Every week it's a different seminar, but then there's a half an hour for questions. So if you've been playing around with it and you all of a sudden you're like, I don't know how to do a hotspot clause, or I don't understand how joint assets work, that's the time. I'll be on there to answer your questions. And that comes after we do about half an hour of a tutorial, and then it's open after that. And then we have tutorials available whenever you want. So you just, I just want to show you, there's a support page right here on our blog. So if you go to eState Planner and you click on the support, you can search for questions that you might have. I don't know how to do, how does the questionnaire work? Or how do I request a tutorial? Well, just click, you can search that way. There's a chat button down here that comes up and you can chat with our team live. So, how do I make a trust gift to grandchildren? All right, here's how to do it, but why don't you jump on a tutorial with me right now? So any of you who have used our support will, I hope, rave about it, because we are on top of things and trying to make sure it's easy. Because as a lawyer, I know we don't have that much time, so we want answers. But I don't want you sitting there wasting your time. So don't waste your time. Get on a tutorial. It can be a 5-minute tutorial. Show me, Michaela, show me how to do this, and we'll do it. So that, and I'm not going to make you stay any longer, but if people have questions, I'm here, and I'll stick around for as long as you want. If you guys have any reactions, any questions, any feedback, anything. Aaron, did you have a question?
Before, oh, sorry, that was from before.
Okay.
Will you send this recording to us?
I believe we will. Yes.
This is really incredible. You should be very proud. I'm amazed. Well done.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thank you. Aaron, I'd like to get to the bottom of your issue. So
thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Good night.
Night.
Anybody else have questions?
Jordan, I had a question. So for the last segment, which
yes. No descendants?
No descendants. Normally clients, what they want is they want to split 50-50. The husband wants to give to his siblings, for example, and the wife wants to give to her siblings. How do we do that?
So we have those macros. So if you click on, I just did that with two clicks. I'll just show you.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did.
Yeah. So
you could just go 50% to my siblings and 50%.
Yeah, so you can do it two ways. Manually, you'd go segment 1, 50%, add a gift, siblings. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a gift over to their kids, okay. Right? And then go back to segments, clicking the segments button here, add a segment, 50%. Now I click add gift. Spouses, I just type spouses, siblings. Gift over to their kids, boom. Now, what you'd want to do, and what I would suggest you do, is build out the family tree, because then it'll name. It'll say, okay, my siblings means, George and whoever, whatever the names are. So that's a place where I would definitely build in the siblings. John's got 3 siblings. Jane's got, that's what I would do, because I want the names in there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you don't have to if you want to just rely on siblings, but the word siblings, I personally would build out the family tree.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is if you sent them the questionnaire, they can go back in using their password and add names if you want them to. Right. So you can send them back to do some homework.
Okay. Are we gonna have some sort of tutorial on how to build macros? Is it coming
Sure.
up?
And what I would suggest you do is just email us using the tutorial and just say, I want to learn how to use macros, and we'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Can you show us how to do an alter ego trust, or is there not enough time right now?
There's we don't do any intervivos planning on this yet.
Okay.
We are building that because we have a bunch of financial advisors. So we don't have an intervivos section yet, but it's something that we're planning on doing within the next 6 months.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. The one thing I'll show you on that front is you can, in the summary, remember where you saw the summary of sort of assets, there's a button down here about apply multiple wills planning. So if you want to demonstrate, to the client, should we use multiple wills or not, you can click on that button and it shows you the tax savings. I don't know if I may have shown that already. I don't recall. Sorry.
I don't think you showed it today, unless I missed it when I got kicked out randomly.
Good. Sorry about that. That wasn't me.
That was not you. That was my husband vacuuming and blowing the power of one of our.
So that's just a really easy way for more advanced. Like if you want to demonstrate, so you say to the client, should we use multiple wills? And then we get into this whole discussion. Well, with just clicking that button, you can say, look, if we do this technique, you're going to say your estate's going to save $22,000. Well, it's taking the private company share, shareholder loans, assets held on in a bear trust, personal effects, and taking off the probate tax.
Do you have a ballpark number wherein you can tell, let's say there's about $2 million in your private shares, that's why you should make, do you have some sort of number at which you recommend multiple second?
Yeah, I mean, I just say that I can just show the client right now. I'd say, okay, do you want to spend X dollars more today to eventually save this amount or not? And it's a pure cost benefit analysis. What goes into my mind is, how old is the client? How much growth is there in that company? Are they going to own it when they die? Do they want to spend the money now to save their kids some money down the road? Assuming they don't change the law on us. So those are the kinds of things I say. $1 million, at $1 million, I start saying, okay, do you want to save 15 grand or not? But it's very easy to, the great thing is now you can actually just demonstrate, and when they see the numbers, sometimes they say, okay, for that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes they say, it's not worth it.
That's right.
And if you wanted to do multiple wills, you just select the multiple wills precedent, and that's going to generate the multiple will templates. And we've done a webinar, an advanced webinar on multiple wills, but we'll do it again. And if you want to, again, tutorials on any subject that you want, just let us know. We'll, if you say, look, I want to, I'd say to you, okay, first generate a multiple will and see how it drafts, and then tell me what if you have questions about it, just let's jump on it.
Okay.
Have you guys used it yet? Are you guys brand new? Anybody used it in real life, or everybody's brand new?
I'm going to be using it very soon.
Great.
Yeah, I've been using it for the last week. So I've added a few clients. I've found it very useful and trying to learn more and more.
Great. Well, do join us, and feel free to, like I said, tutorials are great to get you, because we found that when we call a bunch of lawyers and say to them, I just wanted your feedback, and they're like, well, I haven't got to it yet, or I don't like it because it can't, do blended families, and I'm like, well, oh no, it can. Let me just show you how to do that. So, you can sometimes jump to conclusions that it can't do something, like alter ego trust. You were right on that. But other, certainly will planning, and if we can't do it now, if we haven't thought of it, and we most likely have, but if we haven't thought of it, let us know, because we want it to work as perfectly as possible. So the more information we can get from you guys to say, look, I want to be able to do this. Like somebody said to me, I want to be able to do stage gifts, but not at ages. I want to do it at events and years and numbers of years past death. So we're building that out.
Awesome.
Anything else? No? Aaron, I'm dying to know what happened.
Do you know what? I think maybe it's better when I'm at the office tomorrow. I will email you or Michaela or whatever.
If you have that problem, just email us and we'll get on a Zoom call with you and try to figure out, I'm just trying to figure out where that appeared. So,
You know, it's possible maybe I added the female spouse and I didn't press add before I tried to put the spouse.
that might, okay, so that might be.
No, I think
Yeah.
that might be it.
Okay.
I
All
just
right.
I wanted to thank Michaela. She was helping me out even yesterday. I think it was the long weekend, but she was sending out emails yesterday too. So thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. She's awesome.
She is awesome. Thanks.
All
for-
right, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordy.
Have a great night. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.